Support this podcast at patreon.com/Kris Karl Photography Podcast. The first thing we always do at the podcast is to kind of find out a little bit about the framework of how you got into photography. Let's start off with why you first went towards a camera. What was it that made you want to pick up a camera?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in high school, I was debating between my career path. So I was debating between music or photography, which are both really stable career choices. So I did a few photography classes in high school, and then, but I really went towards music hard. And then when I left high school, I continued with music, but it really started in high school. And the old school way of, in the developing room and doing, right. All like the enlargers and all that, and working with that type of gear, which is, nobody really does that anymore. But that's basically where I got my start. And then I moved out to Los Angeles when I was around 19, and I was doing music, in bands and stuff like that, and playing all over the place. And then honestly, like it was about 3.5 years ago is when I got back into photography. I was working at a hotel as a bellman, and the theme of my jobs have been all over the place: of Uber driver, actor, bellman for valet. And I had been in customer service for so long, and I was just starting to lose my mind. It was just day in, day out, same thing. And so I wanted to start a media company, and the original idea was for me to do actor audition tapes. So I started with that, got all the gear, got all the camera. I made no money, right? Right. But then I ended up working on a song with a friend of mine. It was like a total fluke, but and another artist actually heard it randomly, picked it up, and we ended up selling it to a K-pop band called BAP, B-A-P. And so I had a little extra cash with me, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go buy something that I want. So I went and I bought a drone, and playing with it, whatever. And then I got into doing some like filming, some scenic type things. And I got approached by a real estate company to do drone photography of their party. And so I did the job. It's like $150, whatever, just did some photography. I had all the gear because I had spent all this money trying this terrible business idea. And I then did the job. Then I got a call back like 2 days later. They said, "Hey, do you do real estate photography?" And I was like, in my head, I'm like, no, I've never done it, but I just said yes. And so I did some YouTube searches, like how to do real estate photography. And I did a few shoots for a few agents. I got fired because my lens wasn't wide enough. And I was like basically taking pictures of walls. It was pretty terrible. I begged them for I begged them for my job back. I instantly went out, put $900 on a credit card, got the right lens, and I shot my own apartment for them. And I'm like, look, I can fix this, because I really, I saw an opportunity to potentially get out of my bellman job and, make some cash a different way. And yeah, they hired me back after that, after I shot photos of my own apartment and showed them that it was an equipment error. And that's where photography started. And then it turned, by now, I've shot over 1,000 properties in LA, and that's not an exaggeration. I really have. And, but recently I've been getting into portrait photography, with film specifically. And, honestly, like landscape and just things that I see with actual film, 35 millimeter and medium format. And that's basically where I'm at today.
Well, let's sort of backtrack a little bit here because I've done a little bit of music myself, and I'm just curious in your sense, what's the difference for you as a creative between photography and music? Which one do you feel flows easier, and which one feels more natural?
Well, I grew up in a very musical family. A lot of our activities weren't really surrounded around sports. It was more about music and like playing songs. So that will always be a natural thing for me. But they're both they're kind of similar because you're at the end of the day, you're creating if you're writing music, you're creating a product that is standalone, right? So like right. When you're done with your image, you have something to show for it. When you're done with the song, you have some piece to show for it. I guess that, that's how art works. But I would say music that will always be a part of me. Photography is something that I'm getting better at. I don't know if it comes because photography can become quite technical at times. But they're similar and different in both ways.
Which one do you feel like is more emotionally gratifying? Like, okay, so you write a song that you really enjoy. You take a set of images that you really enjoy. Which one do you feel like you get more gratification out of?
Okay, that probably because the way that I write music is I lyrically, song wise, I feel that it's a little bit more personal. It's my actual, like you're hearing what my biology is producing, the way that I sound. It has to be more personal. Music is more personal. Yeah. If I was more of like a technician in music, like say I was, because when I started, I was doing drums. That never felt as personal to me as writing a song on guitar, singing it, producing it, and putting it out to the public.
And then let's talk about real estate photography. It's not something I have the first clue about, but you bring up something really interesting. We live in the golden age of say yes and then figure it out before you have to do it, right? So you get offered a job, you say yes, you get on YouTube, you figure it out. Do you find yourself looking for a style with that? Or is it literally you're filling briefs and you have to make sure that you're doing the work according to what the company wants? Or are you able to put a little bit of your own flavor on it?
Well, a lot of times because I'm working with either, companies or individual agents, I have to accommodate what they want. The company that I work with now, they love their images like very bright, inviting. And that's coming from a marketing angle. It's more visual. It draws more people in when they see a bright image. Me personally, I like things that are toned down. They're a little calmer with the exposure. Like I'm not afraid of a darker image. I feel like it creates a mood, but just a lot of times, especially when it comes to real estate, like real estate is, I don't know. It can kind of become monotonous after a while because they expect a certain thing and you just have to deliver. I mean, if you want to continue working, when it comes to design and architectural photography, I feel that you have a little more of an artistic input because there's all different types of architectural photographers. There's all types of different types of architectural photography. I mean, if you're going to do something like a documentary type thing, you don't really have a lot of, you're not going to be doing sky replacements on a documentary type of architectural shoot. Right. They want to see what it looks like in its setting, without too much flair.
Okay. And then you've mentioned about like going towards portraiture. And given, like you've just said, there can be sort of a regimented way of working, like with your real estate photography, it's kind of one job after the other. You can get into a bit of a flow where it becomes a little bit, I don't want to say monotonous, but I work in photography. I know how it can be. There are jobs that are just jobs and, they're not exactly firing anything inside your brain.
Yeah.
Is it hard not to take that into the portrait side of things and just kind of treat it as like a technical exercise? Do you find that difficult, or are you still young with it?
Well, I'm still a lot younger with portrait photography, but I actually find it's funny. I find myself being very regimented in how I'm shooting. I'm actually trying to break away from that. And that I don't know if that's just a personality trait of mine or if that's coming from real estate photography, because sometimes I find myself where I'm in a portrait and I'm focusing on, are the lines straight in the background? You know what I mean? Like, and that's not what you're supposed to be focusing on, right? You're supposed to be focusing on the emotion, the interaction between the photographer and whatever your subject is. And I have I have a little bit of a hard time directing the model or the subject and getting them to look the way that I want them to look in front of the camera. But they're two, I mean, as you know, they're totally different animals, because you're kind of working with emotion in a portrait photography setting, right?
I think with portraiture, one of the things that I definitely see through teaching workshops, or I see through watching not tutorials, but sort of BTS stuff, is quite often people pander quite a lot to the subject. And I don't know whether this is just down to sort of my personality or where I'm from in the world, but I think sometimes pandering to people and being overly complimentary and sort of being overly optimistic with them tends to set up a little bit of a distance. Whereas actually you can draw a reaction out of people by kind of throwing it the other way. And I'm not saying like call anyone fat or anything stupid like that, but you can quite literally have conversations where it's like you find out what their button is, you find out something that annoys them, and you can talk about that. And it feels like it's completely distant to the shoot. But if you're doing it during the shoot, you can draw out certain emotions by actually not saying, like, you never say to someone like, can you just look moody? Like you've got to kind of take them to that place, you know?
Yes. And actually, that is something that I'm working on, because I have totally been like, when I was first starting out with portrait photography, and I've watched my videos back, because, I'll make YouTube videos like behind the scenes, mostly for me, just so I can watch. And I can't stand myself. I'm like, bro, why? Like, can I calm down, bro? Like, so it's so true. And that's such a good piece of advice, for people listening, that you don't have to be over complimentary. You don't. Yeah. Like I wish I would have learned that a lot earlier.
Well, the one thing I'd say is like the golden rule for me with photography. And I got into photography because we had a really shit wedding photographer who was terrible on the day, and the pictures were terrible, and we've been left with nothing. And one of the things that he said to me on the wedding day was smile. And my response was, why? And that stayed with me. Like, I should never turn around to someone and just be like, smile. Like, fuck off. Give me a reason to smile. Like, let's have a conversation that's positive. Let's have, like, there are ways of getting emotion out of people without demanding them. This isn't Russia,
Yeah.
I actually found you through YouTube, funnily enough, and it was a video you did. I'm almost positive with someone English, and it might just be because they were drinking tea in the video and I'm just being super racist against the English. But I'm pretty sure it was an English model that you were photographing. And there was a dog there as well, so I probably got quite distracted by the dog. One thing I did really enjoy about your video was the fact that you took the piss out of the, I think it was either Logan Paul or the other one. I don't know which one's which, but you had a good little joke about them.
Oh, yes. Okay. I know I was shooting my friend. Her name's Jordan. She's from Australia. But the tea probably made it confusing, and what's so funny is that when I when I first met her, I was like, "Oh, are you from the UK?" And she's like, "No, I'm from Australia." I'm like, "Oh, I should have known." It's like I'm such an idiot. But
well, there you go. I've just made the mistake. So I'm now looking like a complete
I get a free
for not
pass.
figuring that out.
I get a free pass. Okay.
So let's talk about YouTube. What you said you put YouTube videos up sort of for yourself, for self-reference. What's the process like? Do you shoot differently when there's a camera filming the BTS compared to when you're shooting normally?
Yeah, I'm totally neurotic, and I'm always analyzing myself and like trying to see what I can do better. And just even on a presentation level, like before this podcast, I was like freaking out too, just because I'm going to have to talk about stuff. And so it's kind of like, yes, it's content. Like there's a few elements, right? Like one, I want to make sure that when I'm shooting that I'm, when there's a camera there, there's a little bit more pressure. So I want to make sure that I'm comfortable, with a camera there. Also that, I'm comfortable with my model. And so I usually like to load on more things that would make me uncomfortable and then fight through it. And then you inevitably have to get better, right? I'm assuming, but.
Right. Yeah.
And the other side of that is just, nowadays everybody's a photographer, like literally everybody. So I need to do something I need to, get my name out there somehow. So like, I was just thinking, make videos about what I do, show a little bit of my personality, and maybe this will turn into even more work. I mean, it led to this podcast, which was like actually really awesome. So it did something.
Yeah, I mean, one thing you do say that's perfectly true there is that everybody's a photographer. And I think that like you can say that with even more cynicism, and it becomes more true in the sense that not only is everybody taking photos, but everybody that's taking photos considers themselves to be a photographer. And I think there's a big difference between someone like, my mum taking out her phone and taking a blurry picture of her dog because she doesn't know how to clean the camera on the back of it or anything like that. Yeah. And then, people that have gone out, they buy a $300 camera from I guess over there it would be like Best Buy or whatever, and then that's it. They're a photographer. They're qualified because they bought the camera. That's it. In the same way that like if you buy a fast car, you must be a good driver. And there's plenty of people that drive Ferraris that tend to clip the curbs and fuck their cars up in various ways. I think photography has the same problem.
It's so fun. Do you find that a lot of people associate their gear with their skill, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I see that a lot too. That's actually kind of why I went backwards in my photography. I mean, it's unfortunate that shooting film has become kind of niche or kind of like a cliche in a way, especially on YouTube. Like there's a bunch of channels that do film photography on YouTube, but that's actually like a reason why. Because I guess what I'm trying to explain is Jack White Stripes, guy from the White Stripes.
Yep.
Well, he had this, I was watching an interview with him and he was talking about how he went out of his way to make his process more difficult. Like he would play a guitar on stage that like really couldn't stay in tune that well, or he'd put the piano like a foot further away from where he could make it for the next part of the song. Right. So, and he said by doing that, by making things more difficult for himself, he became better. And also the creativity it was like, it almost was just there because he was having a hard time with it. Like he couldn't get a perfect tone out of his guitar. So it made that very unique sound. And sometimes I feel like, putting yourself in a box sometimes amplifies your creativity. And I find that a lot with, limited exposures, shooting film, developing it yourself. Like you never know what, you're going to get in it. And then when you get it, you get what you get and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like now cameras are built for convenience and it's not about cameras aren't getting better. They're just getting better for stupid people. Like it's easier and easier to take a picture without any skill or any technical knowledge because the camera's now a spaceship. I shoot Sonys, unfortunately, and it's basically like I don't need to be there, which is quite unfortunate. But I think like the reason that musicians and photographers and so many other sort of creative areas, they go back to technology from the 40s, 50s and 60s is because there's a real human element in the design of it and in the manufacturing of it, which means like, so I used to love playing old amps because old amps, like you almost don't ever want to change anything on them. If the tubes go on an old amp, you don't want to change the tubes because like that's the tone of the amp. And it's almost like the sound of it dying sounds better than anything modern because everything modern all sounds the same. And I think that it's the personality of the item that makes you bond with it. And then having to fight it is what you enjoy. I really miss shooting Canon DSLRs because I used to have to fight them so much to get exactly what I wanted from it. And now I've got a camera where, to be honest with you, if I sent it to a wedding in a taxi, it would probably come back with the same stuff that I get when I'm there. So it's the convenience that bothers me. And I think you're right. It does. The challenge makes you better.
Yeah, it makes you better. And I think it makes you, I don't know if it makes you more unique, but it does. It makes you feel like you're actually doing something because, everything's becoming automated and it's kind of, you don't like, I always like, I'll give you an example here. So I have these action lists in Photoshop. Actually, I use this program called TK Actions and it's like a complicated layer masking system. And it basically allows you to select, it makes selecting light and color within the mask like very easy. Right. But I remember like going through it and like try and deconstructing all of the actions, because in my head, I always think everything's about to end, like all the time. Like I'm like, this is going good for now, but what if like I never get the internet back and I forget how to use all my programs because I've learned everything on YouTube. So like I obsessively go back and deconstruct how everything is working. And, I'm not particularly like crazy intelligent. So it takes me a little bit longer. Right. So, I guess maybe that's like another reason why I try to make things more difficult for myself. I feel like I don't want to get so lazy because of the automation, the automatic nature of everything. I don't want to forget.
Well, to go back to something you were talking about earlier, one thing I really respected about your YouTube channel and something that I find quite frustrating about others is that you have a lot of transparency and it feels raw. It just feels like you're doing a shoot and there's a camera there and, you reference the fact that the camera's there. You don't act. I don't feel like anything there is being done in a way that like, wouldn't be the same if the camera wasn't there, in the sense that I don't think you're a different person. I don't think you would take different photos. I just think it's just an additional challenge for you having to sort of keep up appearances while you're doing it.
Totally.
Do you feel like transparency is missing in photography at the moment because everyone's trying to look like they're the best at everything, right?
Yeah, I think that's a tough question to answer because I mean, yes, of course. I mean, look at like, like Instagram culture, right? I mean, transparency is everyone wants to seem like something they're not or seem better than they are or not. And I don't even know if I've ever even thought about that. I mean, I think that there is more. Look, whenever you expose yourself in a creative way, okay. It's like revealing and it's always going to be more interesting. I'm telling you, it's like if you're people can usually read when you're trying to be something that you're not pretty easily.
Yeah.
Right. And if you can just kind of give into that, I think the only person that you're helping is yourself. If you can just be okay with being transparent and being, like if you've seen some of my other videos, like, I mean, I'm making mistakes. I'm like, it's clear that I'm new at portrait photography, right? So to me, it gives you a little bit more of a thumbprint. I think being as genuine as possible and as transparent as possible is always the best route to take.
Well, I think perfection starts to lose its edge when everyone's perfect. And there's a really good way that I see this. And I have this conversation with a model friend of mine quite regularly. And it's this current movement with young women that everybody's a queen, right? Everyone's a queen. We're all queens. And I always say, if you're all queens, no one's a fucking queen.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yep, absolutely.
And just to have that personality and that rawness is actually going to make you stand out a bit more. Let's stick with portraits for a second.
Okay.
Now, you may be new to it, but that really doesn't matter. And I one thing I get quite frustrated with photographers is they feel like when they're new to something, they're not entitled to preference or they're not entitled to opinion on it. And you absolutely are. In the sense of portraiture for yourself, what is the keys to a good portrait? What's a portrait that stands out to you when you're on Instagram or you're wherever you are that looking for inspiration? What makes you stop in your tracks and really check out a portrait?
When I feel, and this could be subjective, but when I feel that an image is honest, I feel that is something that stands out to me. Like I'm completely bored of the half naked women photos. I'm just completely bored of it. It's like the cheat code to Instagram to getting followers. Like, and it seems that is, like, it's funny because I find myself going back and being more interested in more conservative style photography now, just because now it's like hard to find that because they're not maybe like really, if somebody has successfully captured somebody's emotion and I'm buying it, maybe it's not real, but if I'm buying it, that's what would stand out to me. Right.
I guess in the same way of like a great actor in a movie, there's movies that can completely tear you apart emotionally, and you can empathize or you can hate someone that is just not a real person. That's an actor, and it's that portrayal is the same thing in a portrait.
Exactly. Yeah.
You buying in is them doing their job, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. I was just thinking, like, I am attracted to certain styles. Like, this is just me. Like, I guess getting away from just like the look of the image. I have a definite preference when it comes to like what type of colors are being portrayed. And lately I've been obsessed with the Portra 400 low contrast pastel type of look and vibe. I've thought that that's very beautiful. And also there's a photographer, his name is, I hope I'm saying this correctly. It's Neve Bazorgi. I hope I'm saying that right, but he's one, I love his work, and he works a lot with, his images tend to be very mysterious and dark, and he's not afraid to, have mostly shadow in his work. I think that's another interesting thing about, not to repeat myself, but his work. So,
well, yeah, I think like one thing that I struggled with massively when I first started, I remember I went like sort of 2 years not wanting to go in a studio, and it wasn't because of not wanting to like be out of my element and have to learn something, but it was just I didn't like any studio work, because at the time all the studio work that I was being the best way I can put it is confronted with was, like you're saying, like half naked women, incredibly flat, boring pictures, everything's lit. Over here I would call it Asda photography. I think over there you'd probably call it Walmart photography, where it's just it's like that'll do photography. Like there's some tits and there's a woman, there you go, click like, fuck you. That's as much as energy as I'm going to put into it. And like it took me a long time to find the photographers that were producing work that I felt like resonated with me in terms of like subjects, because obviously you have got some absolutely wonderful portraiture. What are you looking for in subjects? What's a great subject to you?
A great subject is when I look at the photograph, and maybe you know what I'm talking about. There are some photographs that I take that it looks like a memory to me. It feels like, I don't know, there's something just majestic about. It's so hard for me to pinpoint because, you know, I am new to it. So I'm just basically running off pure emotion when I look at something. But if it is something that makes me feel like it, I don't know. It's hard to describe. Like, I guess that's the only way I can it feels like a memory, even if whether it's me that took it or somebody else, like it feels.
Is that down to the emotional connection you're saying? Like it feels like there's an emotional connection to the person that's going to view the photo.
Yeah. Like it looks, it looks candid. It looks, I guess that's it.
I mean, last year I joined a camera club as a bit of a social experiment. And one thing that I definitely noticed was that there was no understanding of feel, of like how something feels, how something resonates with you, what something makes you think, or how it pushes you around. There's no sort of provocation. There's no emotion to the way that they judge things. It's just like, well, this line should be straight, like you said earlier, or, you know, I wouldn't have put her on that third. I'd have done this. And I mean, with the exception of one guy that accused me of being gay for about 6 minutes straight while he talked about one of my portraits of a guy, like nothing felt like it was anything other than an exercise in just reading Photography for Dummies out. What is it about portraits that you actually enjoy? Like that, because they're hard work. And you've already said that, like, you know, you've got this pretty decent little game going where you're photographing real estate. What is it about photographing people that's dragged you in that direction?
I think it goes back to the fact I just never thought I was that good at it. I guess it was like pulling emotion out of people has been it's challenging. I don't know if that's easy for a lot of people, but I'm usually attracted to things that I'm not good at. And honestly too, is I think that, you know, becoming a photographer and trying to create work that's interesting is a lot of people find faces interesting. I mean, including me. I think that it's that kind of that never-ending pursuit of grabbing an image that is honest, technically proficient too. I mean, I do think about technicalities. Like I do. Like I want my images, anything that I do, I want there to be intent. Like if it's blurry, I don't want to accidentally take a blurry image and be like, oh yeah, that's artistic. Like I want there to be intent. Like if I'm going to take a blurry image, I'm going to say, I'm going to take a blurry image and then this is going to be the emotion behind it. Right. So
right.
I guess it's just because it was challenging to me. I mean, that's really what's drawn me to the idea of portrait photography.
And with the fact that you're photographing people on film, I'm assuming that there's not a tremendous amount of retouch involved. What's your process in terms of like developing and scanning?
Yeah. So when I develop all my film in my kitchen. I got like the little can, and like I do the temperature reading and all that stuff. It's color film. I also don't know why people think color film is so intimidating. Like in fact, I've been more intimidated to develop black and white film than color. So I do in the kitchen. I obviously I have the bag, I take the film out, roll it up on the wheel, put it in the can, do all the chemicals, let it dry in my shower, just hang it up with some clips. And I've got an Epson V550 that I do all my own scans with. And then I use this really great program in Lightroom called Negative Lab Pro. And that, because I actually went through the whole process of reversing the negatives in Photoshop. And the problem with doing that manually is just there was no consistency because, every film has its own color characteristics. And that's something I like about film. And I was never able to get consistent photos by doing it manually. So this Negative Lab Pro program, it's $100. It's the best thing that has happened for my film work because it's just one button. You can tweak things here and there, like highlights and contrast, but it maintains the integrity of your image, like with the characteristics of that film. And then of course I do edit out little dust particles and blemishes and things like that. But the reason I shoot the film is for the color and for the spontaneity of it. I like the idea that I don't have all the control in the world like you do with digital.
Right. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I mean, one of the things that I've kind of since lockdown, I've started shooting film and I've started developing. I definitely fall into the camp of people that are intimidated by color. So we'll probably have to go back to that at some point. But one of the things that I'm really glad to be moving away from by shooting film is just moving away from what I would call retouch ethics, which is like this constantly moving set of standards of what retouching should be in terms of ethical, moral ground and what it should be in terms of what's accepted by the photographic community as good retouching. Because it feels like the two things never quite line up. I'm not a particularly big fan of the way digital, or no, that's probably the understatement of the century. I can't stand the way that digital retouching is going in terms of what Instagram's done to it, where I'm seeing grass that's bright orange and I'm seeing, skin that's somewhere between magenta and Chernobyl. And just, there doesn't seem to be any subtlety to it. And to go with film tends to sort of obfuscate a lot of the problems of trying to constantly appease all of these stupid standards. Are you not shooting any portraits on digital at all?
No, actually, well, now I'm shooting more. I'm shooting more digital because I've actually had a hard time getting the chemicals that I've needed to develop my own film.
Right.
I've been doing both. I had a portrait session. I was trying to make this YouTube video, probably like 6 months ago, and I mean, it was just a complete disaster. It's like I forgot everything how to shoot on this camera. It's like it was totally embarrassing. So I ended up just resorting to shooting digital because I felt so bad. I mean, luckily the guy was my friend. I was shooting my friend, and he was like totally cool about it. I'm like, he came over, brought wardrobe and stuff, and I had everything set up, and I was just a complete mess that night. Like I was trying, and so right now I've been shooting more digital, and that's simply because. Literally because the chemical issue, but I guess even on Amazon, it's been like hard to find these chemicals, but,
well, probably people think that it's the cure for Corona and they've been injecting it directly to see if it'll help them out.
Yeah.
What are you using for your digital stuff? What camera?
For digital?
Yeah.
For digital, I've got the Canon 5D Mark IV. I use all Godox products just because of price and quality. Like, Godox is great. I mean,
yeah,
they've really come up with a solution at a really affordable price point. Because I mean, if you go with like Pro Photo, I mean, it's like $2,500 for one light. I mean, just I'll just roll over and die at that point.
I feel like Profoto are doing all of the advertising for Godox in the sense that like all you have to do is see the price of Profoto and you're like, cool, Godox, that'll do. Like it's just so ridiculous, the discrepancy between the two.
And, and for film, I've got, I made a whole video about I bought a Nikon F2. This is for my 35 millimeter. So I bought a Nikon F2 off of, actually I found it at a pawn shop, and he's like, it's in great condition. And it's like, cool. Like I love this camera. It's pretty, it's heavy. It's all mechanical. So there's not a lot to worry about. And there's a guy I believe he's in the UK. Yeah. His name is Sover Wong, and he's a Nikon F2 specialist. He refurbishes these cameras. And so I sent that in to him, and it was a year wait. It was a year wait for him to repair the camera, and it took about, I think, 4 weeks for him to repair it. But he takes the whole thing apart. He sends you pictures along the way. It's unbelievable what he does. The camera is now basically brand new, up to spec, and it's a camera from the 70s. So that's my favorite 35 millimeter film camera, is that Nikon F2. And then for my medium format, I'm using the Mamiya RB67 SD, and that produces my all-time favorite images. Like nothing beats that to me. It's just heavy and hard to bring around everywhere.
What is it about the images that you love so much? First of all, you obviously on the medium format, you get a bigger negative. So there's just automatically going to be more resolution, but there's something about the way that the images are just so clear, and they just produce exactly what I want. And 35 millimeter are great. It's great. Like I love 35 millimeter, but it's just something about the medium format. The image that it produces is so clean, and it's cool thing about the Mamiya is that you can. It's a oh my god, I'm not thinking of what's the term where it's like you're physically moving the lens like away. It's the bellows. You can take images. You can take images like almost macro with that, and it's not a problem for it, and it's really cool. It's the size of a car, but isn't it strange though that the whole digital community is kind of like full frame is the absolute pinnacle, and then you've got crop, and then you've got like micro four thirds and all of that stuff, and it's going the complete opposite way. Whereas like full frame in terms of a 35 millimeter on film, people are like, yeah, okay. There is medium format.
Yeah, people are never satisfied, no matter what.
It's just one of those things I find so funny about photographers. It's always like there's always a bigger fish.
Yeah, of course. I think that with anything, honestly.
In terms of yourself and the way that you are as a person, are you someone that has like goals in terms of like, I don't know, I don't want to say like a 5-year plan and make it sound like we're out on a speed date, but are you someone that has like goals that you're trying to achieve over a long period of time? Or are you just kind of, I guess at the moment everyone's just trying to survive, but are you someone that's trying to just go job to job?
That sounds, right now, mentally where I'm at right now, is yes, I'm literally going job to job. And this has been my life. Seriously, I've done almost everything. I've like pursued music, done acting now, and I feel like I'm just always like switching. And it's like I don't know. I don't even like it that much that I do this, but it's right. I would say my goals are, it's figuring out, I've gotten so heavily into the architectural design and real estate photography that right now, I would say I'll give you like my 2-year goal, and it's really to get to the point where I'm doing high-end luxury real estate or architectural photo shoots that. My goals too are monetary as well. Like I'm trying to slowly but surely increase my rate and also my skill set to provide people with just impeccable images that you can't recreate unless you really know what you're doing. So that's really my goal. That's like a 2-year plan.
That's pretty good. That's more than I've got. I've got about a 3.5 day plan at the moment.
That's
just don't die of COVID in the next 3.5 days, and I've met my goal.
Yeah, perfect. That's good.
In terms of, you brought up earlier that the film photography is kind of taken off, especially with YouTube. What do you sort of think the reason is for film photography becoming so prevalent?
I don't know. I think it's I honestly feel that YouTube has such a strong hand in making film photography have its resurgence. I think a lot of like the marketing, like, I've heard some people on your podcast talk about George Muncie, and he's actually, negative, about negative feedback and George Muncie. Do you know about him?
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. That's really where I first got into film, kind of following. And I was totally drawn in by the whole idea of just, they make it cool. Like they have cool, like I do it too in my YouTube videos. I'll have like, lo-fi music in the background, and like, you take the picture, and then like, it's like you put like the click sound in, and then you have the image show up. And I don't know, they're really just lifestyle videos that I just have on in the background all the time.
Right.
I think that YouTube and some of these guys have just made it cool. It's kind of like, it's a little bit hipster, but if you really know what you're doing, then I think it kind of turns into something else. I mean, I think it's just become cool again.
It's hipster until you've got a portfolio, right? Once you've got...
Yeah, exactly.
If you're just doing it and it's like the process of being seen shooting film and the process of talking about film, that's hipster. But if you're producing something on a regular basis, that takes it to an actual real kind of pursuit as opposed to just kind of a lifestyle, the way you put it.
And it's kind of frustrating because I would love to shoot film on an actual job. I'm not talking about architectural shoots. Like I'm talking about, portrait shoots. But a lot of times, like if I were to get hired for an editorial thing tomorrow, I'm not going to bring my film camera. I'm going to bring my digital and my lights and everything, just because of the demands of what usually the client is expecting. Unless you've built your name and your portfolio as a film specific photographer, and this is your look, and this is your thumbprint on it, that's when you can really start shooting with film. But right now, I mean, I don't have that thumbprint yet. So I'm basically bending to what, a client wants. And I know, and I actually have more confidence, with a high-end gig like that, you need multiple takes. You can't be guessing, especially when it comes to lighting and it comes to, reflectors and all this other stuff. You need to be able to see what you're producing in camera.
We've talked about YouTube pretty extensively. One thing I'm starting to get the sense of, and maybe not necessarily the people that you've mentioned so far, although I do think there are some people in the film community on YouTube that definitely do this. Do you feel like photography on YouTube takes itself a little bit too seriously?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I've done it too. I've tried to take myself seriously, but I just look like a fool when I take myself seriously. I mean, I don't know why that happens. I mean, maybe you can answer that for me.
Oh, well, I could answer it, but I don't know if I could answer it for you. Like, in my opinion, I feel like people don't spend enough time around people that will give them honest feedback. So people are very good, especially, I think we're getting better and better at it, is just surrounding ourselves with people that validate us and our experience. And, there's a word I personally think should be banned from the dictionary, which is the word haters, which sounds even worse. If you could say it just quickly, could you just say haters for me?
Haters.
See, it sounds so much better in an American accent. In an English accent, it sounds like I'm the stuffy old man that's bringing something up that he doesn't understand.
I completely disagree with that statement. I think that you could say anything and sound like you know what you're talking about. That's how I view it.
Oh no, I've not got one of the good English accents. This is why I love America so much. I come over and people think I'm intelligent. It's wonderful. Over here, everyone realizes I'm the thick piece of shit that I am. So
no.
Yeah, one thing I think with the photography community in general, and maybe not just YouTube, but we've got this Instagram culture where everybody's got to seem like they know what they're doing, and they're always succeeding, and all they do is win. And then you've got the inability to fail, in the sense that, like, it's pretty easy now. Like, things are pretty easy. It doesn't take much to learn photography at all. It's pretty straightforward. It doesn't cost you any money. We've basically bypassed all formal education by having YouTube and having online tutorials. And it's just kind of got to that point where, It's easy. Stop acting like you've climbed Everest when all you've actually done is taken a picture of a girl or taken a picture of, I don't know, a landscape or whatever. Like you haven't done open heart surgery. You've taken a picture on a camera that honestly, if you left it on its own, it would probably start figuring out how to take pictures by itself.
I see this with just art in general. Like I sometimes, I mean, I've been to, I went to the Broad probably about a year ago, and there's a full display of just canvas with just a solid color painted on it. And I'm sitting, and I'm just like, that's a canvas with blue. And I'm sitting here. And then of course there's like an entire monologue next to it, what it really means. And I think that a lot of people create something that looks kind of cool. And they're like, okay, how can we add value to this by giving it a purpose? Right.
Right. Yeah.
I think that happens in every art form. Photography too.
There was one of my favorite ones was, so I used to do a lot of lyric writing, and I'm very fascinated by sort of the way that people use words. I'm constantly fascinated just in speech, the way that people use words. And there was a radio interview over here with a singer who I think you might have heard of, but I'm not sure. A singer called Rita Ora. And she was promoting her new single. She's a British singer. She was in like the Fast and Furious movies, one of them, I think. She's kind of just a fringe nobody, but she's somehow stayed famous.
Okay.
And she's talking about her new single, and she's saying, I can't remember the exact context because genuinely no one on earth cares at all about this song, but the interview I found interesting. And basically she was saying that the song was about her wanting to be with someone, but they can't be together. And when you actually listen to the song, there's no like hidden meaning to the song at all. The whole song is about the person wanting to be with her, but she doesn't want to be with them. And it's like, you didn't even listen to your own fucking song. Like, could you have just got like someone to brief you on what you sang? Like she's on there giving this like heartfelt explanation of a song that she's not even read the lyrics that she sung.
Oh my God. It's funny because like if you go, obviously everybody knows Nirvana, and yeah. he in interviews, he would always be like, look, like I'm just singing crazy shit. Like, and you guys are applying like, I loved Kurt's honesty when it came to his music. People had theories on what he was really trying to say. And maybe, and he never gave him an answer. And he would just, and I mean, I just love that. And he was like almost the opposite of what that is today. Kind of thing.
Yeah, I think nowadays everyone just tells you everything about their life. They fill in every blank. Whereas someone like him kind of being aloof and not filling in the blanks means that people suddenly find all of these hidden meanings, and he becomes, I mean, with him, I guess it was never really the goal, but it's kind of ironic that him not trying to fill in the blanks kind of created more of a buzz. Yeah,
I think that we could probably take a lesson from that today. I think,
yeah.
I think it might even benefit you, benefit an artist in a way to not give away everything they're thinking and not, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Let's do some broad questions. I want to put you on the spot and try and catch you a little bit cold. Oh God.
Okay. You might do it. So here we go.
What do you admire more with a photographer, their technical prowess or their ability to kind of convey emotion?
Convey emotion, absolutely. Anyone can learn technicality. I learned technicality. That's not saying much. So definitely to convey an emotion.
Does a photographer have to know how to shoot film to be considered a real photographer?
No. I think they should, just because it kind of changed. It'll teach you more, but no, I don't think so.
Is video the next step for every photographer? Should every photographer be learning video?
No, I don't. I think they're two different mediums. I feel that it's okay for them to stay separate. There's different challenges with each,
It's strange. I've had people say that literally video is the next, like if you are a photographer at the moment, you're on the verge of being extinct because video is taking over. And I just find that a really fascinating way of looking at it, because I just see them as being completely different things.
That's exactly exactly how I feel. Yeah. They are. I mean, like, imagine, you can tell a story on video by, there's so much more information, but there is something, if you can tell a story in a single image, it's not moving, that's pretty impressive to me.
Is something about photography. Okay, so I got to really think of a way to frame this because I don't want it to be too genre specific, but do you feel like narratives or learning how to convey narrative is a really important part of photography?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Because obviously you work in architecture or in real estate where there's not going to be a narrative other than the implied sales narrative. Whereas with portraiture, I feel like, especially with yours, there's a pretty decent line of narrative in there. Just wondered if it was something that you're doing on purpose or is it just something that's coming out naturally?
It's funny. I think there are narratives in architectural photography. And I think that a lot of times it's displayed with a lot of times you can create the narrative around how the structure is reacting to the light and how, because you can still create emotion in an image with no people. Like if one of my favorite architectural photography photographers is Mike Kelly. And I mean, he's new and that's the other thing too, is I don't know like so much history. I'm sure there's somebody that might be upset that I'm not like saying somebody from the 1930s, but this is just who I'm looking at right now. And I like, that's just because, whatever. But, he does a great job of creating emotion in his work. And it's just a space, It's a lot easier to pick that out with a portrait because we're all human and we understand, emotion and micro expressions within somebody's face. But I think it's all important. I think that should kind of be like a foundation, at least one of them that you have when it comes to taking a photo.
Well, I would definitely say for people that people often think that expression is needed to convey an emotion. I would absolutely suggest that people watch the movie Ghost Story with Rooney Mara and Casey Affleck, because Casey Affleck spends about 80 minutes of that movie with a sheet over his head where you see no facial expression. There's no vocalization. There's no narration of what he's doing. It's entirely conveyed by framing and the composition of the shot and his movement, but without expression. And it does more emotionally than most movies can do, with the expression being incredibly prominent.
Oh, no, I guess, I totally, I totally agree with that. And I think that would probably, harken back to, I guess, what I was saying about like composition within architectural photography and creating emotion like that when it comes to like you said, the composition can create emotion as well. And it's a really good point.
It was a bit of a long one here. I do apologize. I'm not trying to keep you too long.
No. This is great.
But I do have a question. I think I feel like me and you are on a very similar page on a lot of things. What do you think happens to photography if Instagram disappeared overnight?
I think that what happens to photography, not what happens to attention, because attention, no vacuum is ever just left a vacuum, right? So there will always be something for people to portray their work. But in specific response to your question, I think that you will find the true photographers will continue taking photos and continue producing work and continue releasing in other ways and other mediums. And I feel that, photography, I guess I'm answering more with like, well, what will happen with photographers, but what will happen with photography? I mean, I hope it's always valued. Is that kind of the question? Like, are you wondering like, will it still be appreciated the same way or?
Well, I like a broad question. I like a question to kind of see where you want to take it as opposed to guide you too much. But one thing with this is that I think a lot of people are into photography because of Instagram,
the attention,
because of that culture.
Yeah.
And I feel like there would be quite an exodus of people if there wasn't an immediate replacement for that vacuum, as you put it. I feel like there's a lot of people that would just walk away and find something else that would
they would just drop off
that attention.
Yeah. Yeah, you said it much more eloquently than I did, but that was basically what I was trying to get across. I feel like there would be a lot of people that would drop off. I just, I mean, everybody does. I mean, people like attention, but it's become such a thing, now, basing the value of your work on how many likes it has, or everybody knows this and everybody kind of says the same thing, but it's true. It's like we put a little bit too much value on likes.
No, 100%. I've been saying for the longest time that I feel like it's where we've seen religion recede in popular culture, and being atheist or agnostic is becoming more and more common. And this isn't me going on a preach about how people should be religious. I'm not religious, but it's a cultural observation that I feel like as people become less and less religious, they put those same standards into other parts of their life. It feels like it's something they seem to need to fill. And if you look at the language of social media, followers and the metric of counting how many people appreciate you is very bizarre. It's a very bizarre thing to chase.
Do you think it is something that naturally occurred, or is it a sinister plot? Does that mean
oh, good Lord. That's a really big question.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've kind of caught me out. I would say,
sorry.
No, I would say that in terms of like Instagram and in terms of Facebook, and the language that they're using is very intentional. I would say people's gravity towards it and people's desire for it is, it almost feels infantile. It feels like when you get the kid that you get that dick kid at school that's like, he does something that makes the whole class laugh or makes the teacher happy, and he just rinses and repeats it over and over again until you're sick of it.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like there are people like that where they do a thing and they realize it. Like I've had photographers on the podcast and people, and I've never had someone on the podcast whose work I don't like. As a rule, I won't have someone on if I don't genuinely appreciate the work that they do.
Nice.
And
I'm in the club.
Said, you're in the club, my friend. I'll send you your t-shirt.
Yes.
some twat from England likes my work t-shirt.
No.
I've had people say like, oh, I did this kind of work and then that wasn't really getting me much attention. And I tried this other thing out and that got me attention. So I went down that route. And I just think that's what pushed you. That's what led you, it obviously worked because I liked the work that you're producing, but are you satisfied? Because you're doing something entirely for feedback, and maybe it's just me being incredibly naive, but I don't feel like I could do that.
No, you're probably just honest. That's probably, it's not a bad thing. It's funny. Sometimes, I'm guilty of this as well, is I will see an image that is what I think is just maybe mediocre or whatever. And if you then see a name that's attached to it that's had other work. Like, I don't know how much of this, like how much of the value in the art world is premeditated by, like, for example, if you're going to go out, you're going to see a picture of a painting and it's like a terrible painting, but somebody bought it for $1 million or whatever,
right.
£1,000,000 for you. Right. Like, and it's like, is it now worth $1 million? Like, what is making it? Is it just because someone purchased it for that amount, or is it because it's actually like, I don't know.
I think the worst thing with art is when you feel like you're stood on the outside and you're not getting why someone would pay $1 million for something. That's like the worst thing, because you're only left with the conclusion that I'm only left with the conclusion that people are either lying to themselves or they're stupid. And that's obviously ridiculous because I'm putting my own opinion on way too much of a pedestal and I might be completely intellectually missing the point of that piece of art. But that's kind of the weird thing about art, right? Is like you say, and just for clarification, if it's $1 million, it'll be about £812,000.
Thank you. Thanks. You're good at these numbers, man.
I blatantly got that wrong and someone's going to send an email just like, excuse me.
Send me that email too, so I don't feel stupid.
But I do feel like it's a weird thing with art where, I've had people on the podcast and they send me suggestions afterwards of photographers for me to check out or photographers for me to have on the podcast. And I've looked at their work, and not always, most of the time I'm blown away, but there's been like the odd one or two where I'm just like, really, I'm not seeing it, and I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm really not seeing it. And maybe it's me intellectually not seeing it, but my immediate thing, and I think it's an ego preservation thing, is my immediate thing is like, they must not have good taste.
Yeah, I mean, that could be it. But then again, but it's so weird because it's just so subjective. Like there's stuff that I see that is, I mean, I'm like, okay, and then other people are like, no, this is actually brilliant work. Do you see how that like paint is splattered on the right side and what that symbolizes? Like, do you see that? Like, I'm like, oh, okay. And then I can actually, trick myself into, I don't know how much it's me not knowing enough or how, I mean, sometimes I feel that people that don't know anything about any art and they see something and they like it, that you're probably going to get the most honest opinion from that person. Right.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I don't know if this translates to America, but I definitely say in England, the people that come across as the most true and the most, what's the correct word I want to use here? People that come across the most justified in their own opinion, and they feel like they're on the most solid ground with their own opinion, are the people that are the least interacting with the art world, the ones that aren't artists themselves. And when they don't like something, they don't like it. They're not trying to find a hidden reason why it's great or whatever. They're just like, no, that doesn't do anything. That's crap or whatever. And they're so dismissive, or that they like something without being able to explain it, that it feels more realistic. I feel like, like you said earlier, when people are able to tack on a meaning to something, it obviously loses a bunch of integrity. If you really, if you realize that they're tacking something on, it loses its integrity to you. And I think that people on the outside of the art world, I was talking this morning to Ryan Brenneiser, who's one of my absolute heroes in photography, and he was really talking about the value of asking non-photographers and people that are actually the people that are going to buy your work or buy into your work, or the people that are your target market. Why are you not asking them for their feedback? Why are you asking photographers? Because photographers are never going to be your market unless you are literally selling cameras or workshops or presets. And it's a great point.
Yeah, I think it's just the honesty. Sometimes just a blank slate. You just have a blank slate and you're able to take it in. Who did you say you were speaking with? What was his name?
His name's Ryan Brenneiser. He's a wedding photographer. He was, I believe he was like a non-staff photographer for Obama. He photographed the Clintons fresh out when he came out of college. He was brought in to photograph the Clintons, and
he's like starting yeah.
He's an incredibly intelligent and articulate person, but he's also a fantastic photographer. And the reason that I'm such a big fan of his is that he has a technique that he does involving photo stitching, it literally changed the way that I do photography. And like when you watch those infomercials where there's like a mop or something, and people are like, this will change the way your life goes. And he actually did that, as opposed to me having to be a bad actor and say it. But he had such a different perspective on it. He came from journalism into photography, and yeah, it's just, I just feel like there's value outside of the community that we're completely missing because we're so focused on impressing other photographers or other artists or other musicians or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you heard of, I'm like saying people that I feel like everybody knows, but Joey L is another one that kind of like just blew up, and his work is incredible. He's also a brave dude. I mean, he'll go there to get the shot, right?
Yeah.
I've been into his work as well. Who would you say that your favorite photographer is?
I like this. You're the first person that's interviewed me. This is pretty great.
Oh, I'm sorry, bro. I'm usually.
No, I like it. Do you know what? When I started the podcast, especially doing it remotely, it was like, how do you instigate a conversation with someone that's not in the room and that you're not looking at? Because I like to keep these audio only. So all I had to do was just contact you, and it would have been easy. So for me, like favorite photographer and best photographer are like different subjects, because my favorite isn't the best and the person who I think is the best isn't my favorite. But there's really four. Like there's like a Mount Rushmore of photography for me. And
I'm actually going to write these down because I want to check them out. Yeah, I actually want to write them down. Yeah, tell me.
They're going to be horrendously obvious, I feel. Maybe not. So the first one, the person that really got me into portrait photography and photographing people was Emily Soto.
Okay.
I think she's now New York based. And she used to put out these like 3-minute music video type BTS things on YouTube. They're still up, and they're like when you look at the standard of production value in photography on YouTube now, they look like that no one's tried, because everything's so over the top nowadays. Like, she hasn't even got a gelled light in any of her, her "what's going on, guys" bullshit.
Yeah. The YouTube personality.
Exactly. But she just showed you what she was doing, and you got to see the images, and her images just stood out to me so much. Like, there's so much softness to them. And my personal mantra with photography is whatever I'm photographing, I just want it to look as attractive as possible to me. Mm-hmm. And I feel like then if I'm being honest with that, then, it should translate. And in some cases it doesn't, but it's my honest interpretation of it. And whether that be like, a wedding cake or the bride or the groom or a model or a picture of my dog, I'm always just looking for like the way to best frame that subject. And I got that from Emily Soto. And then following on from her, a photographer called Ross Harvey, who was actually on the podcast a short while back. He's easily the best wedding photographer in the world, in my opinion. And he's an English guy. I did one of his workshops. He's a lot less down to earth than me. He's definitely got a very optimistic personality, and he's very spiritual, and I guess that would be the word. I don't know, but he's just phenomenal at framing emotion. And he's a street photographer that photographs weddings and a wedding photographer that photographs street, and it carries across so amazingly. His ability to just kind of frame quirky framings of incredibly simple scenarios, and his use of like mirrors and reflection and silhouettes. He's just an absolute legend of photography to me. And then the last two, which I'll speed through real quick because I'm talking too much, is...
No, I'm loving this.
Agata Surge is a Polish portrait and fashion photographer who's based in New York and I believe in Warsaw, but I'm not 100% sure on that. She's the queen of freckles, basically. She's actually a queen as opposed to everyone being a queen. Her portraits are so textured and so emotive, and I don't know, there's so much personality to the images that she takes. And it seems like the bigger that she prints them and the bigger that she, like, the more close up she gets to the subject, the more personality she brings out, which almost feels like it shouldn't work that way. And then the last one was the gentleman I had on this morning, which is Ryan Brenneiser, who basically changed photography for me in terms of being able to shoot beyond the size of sensor that you have and be able to stitch things and really play with depth of field. And he has one of my favorite quotes of all time, which was, "Everything outside of your frame doesn't exist." And that's like perfect for a wedding photographer. Like, that's how you should work. Like, that you might work in non-ideal circumstances, but what's outside of the frame just doesn't matter.
I love it. I like, it's as you're telling me these names, I'm looking at their work, and it really is great. It's so cool that you get. It's so cool that you get to, interview these people, because
I've learned so much from it. It's been an awesome, like a genuinely in the English sense awesome, as opposed to, as Eddie Izzard would say, the American sense with, this is an awesome hot dog.
Yeah, everything is awesome in America.
Exactly. It's genuinely awesome. I've had some real sort of epiphany moments in recording these where people have just brought stuff up from an angle that I'd never think of, or they have a perspective that I didn't think that was a way that a photographer could look at stuff. Ryan this morning was talking about how you have to love the person that you're photographing, or you have to find a way to empathize with them or like them. Otherwise, you're never going to do a good job. And it's absolutely true. I've been in situations where I've absolutely hated the person that I'm being expected to produce a great photo of. And I feel like it's their responsibility for me to like them. And it's not. It's my responsibility to find a way to like them. And, that's just something I never would have thought of.
Yeah.
That's enough about me. We're talking about me far too much. Let's go with the last question I want to ask you, and then we will wrap up. What do you do when you're not shooting to improve yourself as a photographer? Do you watch movies? Are you always looking at light when you're out and about? What's your process to improve when you haven't got a camera in your hand?
This is going to sound so basic, but I watch so many videos online. I mean, it's not the most romantic answer, but I spend so much time watching videos online from different photographers. You said when I don't have a camera in my hand. So like when I can't be shooting. I've learned everything that I've that I've done online. There is, you can also, old movies as well because a lot of times old movie, like if you compare an old movie to today, it's just like those movies would never be made today, just because it's just all dialogue and it's just so much more straightforward. It's kind of a boring answer, honestly. I mean,
it's not at all.
It's a millennial. I feel like it's a millennial answer. It's like, oh, I watch YouTube, but it's true. I mean, that's really what I do, man. I consume so much on YouTube of people that I like, and that's about it.
There's nothing wrong with a millennial answer when,
that was, what a way to end it.
Yeah, but the Generation Z answer would just be to get every other photographer cancelled so you'd be the best one going.
Yeah, maybe I should, who knows? Maybe that is the best strategy. I don't know.
I feel like there's enough in this podcast for you to get me cancelled. So then you've just got to work on the rest of them. All right, I'll give you one more question because you don't want to go out like that. So
no, I do not. I mean, that's the truth though. You're talking about being transparent. I mean, that's literally, that's it.
All right, this one's a little bit different. I've never had someone answer this question properly. So there's a lot of pressure on you right now.
Ooh,
you photograph portraits. Who would you like to photograph if you could photograph anybody in the world?
Anybody in the world. One, there is no right answer to this, but anybody in the world. Oh my God. Kid, does it have to be from this time?
Are you asking me alive and dead, basically?
Like, yeah.
Anybody you want. I'd prefer it if they were alive.
Prefer if they were alive. Okay.
It could be anyone in history, but I would just prefer you didn't photograph them while they're dead because that would be weird.
Okay. Anybody in the world. God, this really put me on the spot because there's just too many. I mean, you're asking me, there's 9 billion people on the planet.
You can have a few. Go for it.
I would want to photograph. Oh, I'm completely panicking right now. I'm completely having a complete brain meltdown. Yeah, this is terrible, dude. You're going to have to cut the podcast short. No.
Would you like me to just do mine to buy you some time?
Yeah, give me yours. Buy me some time because there's...
Yeah. Okay, so for me, in terms of like, I broke it down. So let's say 5 people. I broke it down into like why I would want to photograph them. So firstly, Lenny Kravitz, because I think he's the most attractive human being that's ever lived. And I'm a straight guy. I think he's just the most photogenic human being that's ever existed. And his music is just insane. Rihanna, because I think that she would be the most amazing fashion model. She's got so much confidence. She's naturally a performer, so she wouldn't be stiff. And she's got a fantastic face. I think she'd be an amazing fashion model. Third would be Kris Cornell, who was singer for Audioslave and Soundgarden and so on.
Oh, yeah.
I was just such a huge fan of him while he was alive, and I'd love to have a portrait of him that I took. And then I would probably say, like, I would be really interested to photograph someone like the I don't know if it's a prime minister or president of China, like someone outside of my sphere, but who is politically, involved, is politically active, someone that's going to be relevant in historical terms in years to come. Because I just feel like one of the great things about photographing people's faces is that people put so much interpretation into expression. And I'd love to take an incredibly stoic portrait of someone like that and then just watch people make up shit about what was going on when we took the photo. And then the last one would be really tough. If I was doing 5, I'd probably just pick Leonardo DiCaprio because he was in my favorite movie. And that's probably the best answer I can give.
That's incredible. You know who I think would be a challenge?
I bought you some time. Come on, I bought you some time.
Yeah, I think, who would be a challenge to photograph just because of his bombastic nature would be Kanye West. I think that would be an interesting photo session because you're not going to tell him what to do. Like you're not going to, control that session. I think that would be that would be an interesting person to photograph. I agree. Any president really. I mean, because being a president is not an easy job. I think that I would like to shoot. I think it would be interesting to shoot Kim Jong-un just because He's
Well, it's going to be historically huge, right?
yeah. I mean, it's got to be historically huge. I would like to shoot. I would like to photograph Trump because he's turned the world upside down. I mean, you have to pick people that have just made a complete wake, and I think that these people have done that. I think that they would be just. I mean, it'd be a photograph that I don't know. What a way to end it, man. Let's just go with Kanye West. I feel that Kanye West would be just a lot of fun to shoot.
So you said Kanye West, Kim Jong-un, and Donald Trump. So all three people that are going to lead a country one day.
Yeah, basically. I just think that they've turned things so. I think that they have created such a chaotic environment that it would just. I'm being kind of selfish because it's more so could I handle the shoot, not so much what would my image look like, but could I handle that type of pressure and that type of situation.
See, that's what's so fascinating about the question, right? Because I've had people that have refused to answer it because they don't want to upset the wrong people, which I find really funny. I've had other people that say they've never thought about it, which I absolutely call bullshit on, because if you sit and you're a photographer and you're watching a movie and you see an interesting face, you think about photographing it. So I absolutely call bullshit on it. But you're taking it from a point of view of process versus product, and you're choosing process, which is really interesting. Let's just quickly ask you one more question, because you brought up Kanye West, so we've got to quickly run away from that. Otherwise, that's all anyone will remember. In terms of your day-to-day photography, do you prefer the process or the end result?
The process, because so much of photography is me thinking I'm not that good. So it's really selfishly about me getting better at the end of the day at what I'm doing. And if it's an uncomfortable situation, I think that's the best scenario to get better.
There you go. That's the way to end the podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. So we need to tell everyone where they can go to check out your images and your YouTube and whatnot. So link away. Tell everyone where they need to find you now.
Yeah, absolutely. So my YouTube is, if you look up Kyle Joseph Buckley, youtube.com/C/Kyle Joseph Buckley, because I had to change it, of course. And then, but really Instagram is where I post most of my work. It's Kyle Joseph Buckley on Instagram. And that's it.
It's been an absolutely fascinating chat. It's gone wildly differently than I expected, but I've had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I was nervous for this, and I was excited at the same time. It's the first podcast about photography, man. I appreciate it.
Are you hearing my words I'm saying to you? 'Cause I'm looking in your eyes. You're looking past mine, but I'm just trying to break this cycle. Why are you staring at the door like I'm in the way? If you're leaving, that's fine, but don't forget your pride. 'Cause I'm just trying to break this cycle. Are you? Are you? Are you? waste, saying sorry for things that we can't